So there's the 4 panels of a door that have all been glued up, proving the age-old adage that you can never have enough clamps. So we'll leave that lot 24 hours and then come back and take out the clamps and sand them all smooth. So there's one plank of wood and it's been cut down the table saw and it's touching at both ends. So if we go down here, look how much the wood has opened up. Look at the gap there. And I go to the other end and it's touching. So it really goes to show how much tension the wood is under, and that when you cut a long piece of wood, it actually springs to its kind of natural shape. So within that one plank, there was a vast amount of tension, and now we've released that because we cut it into 3 planks, and you can see that big gap there. I'm kind of hoping that if I put that on the outside, I can squeeze it in with clamps and it won't really matter. So that's my hope. Otherwise, my brother's going to have to buy another bit of wood. I don't want to do that because it's expensive. This one remaining piece of timber here is going to make up that section, and that section. So I think the thing to do is to cut it all to the same length in that direction, i.e. from there to there, and then I can obviously thin down a 7 centimetre section for that, and then the offcut can then be added on to probably make that bit. And I'm not sure if I can do that in one go, but we'll have a go. So it's time now for me to run grooves down all the inside of the wood so that I can create a space for, well, it's the joinery, so that the door fits together. So obviously it's panels, and a 4-panel door, so I need grooves for everything to go in, and then I'll make tongues or like open-ended tenons, but it's more like tongues and grooves really. So I'm in the process of making the grooves. So the first thing to do is to go to the table saw and change it from just a 1 blade, put 3 blades on, and then I will show you as I cut the grooves. So on this one here, for instance, I only want a groove on the inside. On this one, I want a groove on the inside. On that one, I want a groove on that side and that side, that side and that side. Obviously on the bottom one here, I want to groove all the way across there, but nothing on the other side, and the same on the top, just on the inside there. And then obviously these will be tongues that fit into these grooves, and those will fit into that will fit into that, and you'll see. Now I need to decide how high or how deep I want my groove to be, which I think I've made that decision already. I think it was 3 centimetres, but I'll check it. And then obviously I'll set up the fence, and then if I run a piece of wood and then turn it around and run it through it again, by definition it'll put that groove in the middle. So you can see that is basically a centerline mark there. And you can see that this is pretty much offset to the left-hand side. And the reason it's offset is because once this has been cut and I turn this piece of wood around and run it through the other way, obviously if that stays always in the same place, then by the time you've run this through and spun a bit of wood around, you'll widen this gap out. This is 7 millimeters of curve with this dado stack on. So what I want to do is I actually want to cut out to that point there. Having run it through and then spun it around again, we now have that lovely 3 centimetre dado. Okay, so as you've seen, I've done the top and the bottom, and we've got this lovely groove. But these are short pieces of timber and they're relatively easy to manage. Now that I'm going to be doing the big long sides, they are quite long and they are you know, the possibility for things to start wandering gets in, well, it becomes more probable. So I've not done this before, but I've got a feather board which is normally used over there on the router table. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this feather board up so that this feather board is you know, constantly pushing against the material. So this is a good example to use because this is already been cut, so I know this is in the right place, and this will make things safer. And safer with dados is good for me. I was just thinking that before I put the grooves down the big tall verticals on either side, you know, the centre of the door, you know, the rail on the right, the rail on the left, and the one in the middle. I think the best thing to do is to, you know, the next time you see this, there'll be a big 3 centimetre groove down that side and one down the other side, so that stuff can fit into it. This one is the middle one, so that's the middle of the door. And I just thought to myself, it would be much easier now with a flat surface to hand plane this smooth with a number 4 before I actually put a groove down it, because then you've got a much narrower area and it's possible that you could make a mistake. So you know what, I'm going to give this I'm going to lightly dress this with a number 4 hand plane. I decided to take this off the time lapse because this was so easy with this number 4. If you watch, there's a video on me doing up this number 4, and my God, that is just absolutely perfect. So we're getting beautiful full width shavings off it. See, that's the table saw finish, and the right hand side, that's the hand plane finish. So it's much better to do it now and get it to that stage. This is the very top, and you can see it's got the groove on the inside, and that's the very top. And you know what, as I'm here and it's so easy, I think I will just smooth this off as well because it's that easy. Old Rob Korsman trick. This is one of those little candles that you get at church once a year when they, I don't know, Easter or something like that. I keep it, put it on the bottom. Oh, beautiful. Again. So if you look at the difference between before and after, that's just been planed, you can see how, you know, it'll just be nice, won't it? These are now manageable parts, and I'm not sure which way the grain's going, but this blade is so sharp, it don't make no difference. So because that blade is set up perfectly, you're not getting any bias towards one side or the other. So now you have that absolutely perfect finish. So I need to put a groove on that side. So what I want to do is I want to make sure, I'm doing a dry run to make sure when this is finished, it's not impeded. And so that would be as if it was completely been run through the table saw. So we're good with that. I'll cut one at normal speed just so you can see what the process is, and then the rest of it will obviously be on time lapse. as you can see, this one here, this middle horizontal, I'd call that a style. Rails, as in, you know, like the rails of a railway line, and the stiles that you walk over when you go through a field. So that middle stile there is 26.7 wide, and so I had to join two pieces of timber together. This is actually that middle stile, and you can see down the bottom there that I've got a section glued onto it. 5 clamps left now, and all the rest are employed. And I can't move that until such times as that thing comes out the clamps, because that, being that piece there, needs to have grooves cut in that side of it and in that side of it. So that's the end pretty much of day one. All the panels, once they come out, can be sanded down, and then we'll put those on the table saw. I'll show you what I'm going to do with those, and we'll fit those in. This is a furniture, like a furniture cabinet scraper. It's got a burr on it. I've sharpened it myself, and sort of I've kind of like beveled an edge over, and it's extremely effective at pulling off the glue and giving you a really super smooth edge. So I have cut this central stile to fit, and I've grooved it top and bottom. And I was thinking last night about this, and I thought to myself, well, the only thing I could do is you know, cut a piece of timber and put that down there in order to thicken this. But I think the best thing to do is to just write that off to experience, and I have bought myself another piece of wood now, and this length of timber will accommodate making the top rail and the bottom rail. And I think what I'll do is, while the table saw is set up, I'm going to cut a rail which is nowhere near as deep, and it doesn't matter that the actual panel will end up being slightly offset, because there's not going to be any dressing on it, and there's not going to be anything visible on the back of it. So I'm going to recut this top and bottom, only this time I'm going to allow myself a much smaller depth of groove, which gives me a much thicker tongue. So that's the next job. As you can see now, I've put a groove which is 1.5 centimetres deep, and that means we're going to have a nice wide tongue that's going to fit into here, which is obviously half of the thickness of the normal groove, which is 3 centimetres thick. So now all the grooves are cut, what I need to do is to remove the feather board and set this up so that I can effectively cut the tongues to fit into the grooves. So I'll put that process on time lapse, and then we will cut and fit all the grooves, and then that way that will be the joinery complete, and the frame of the door will fit together. Now that I've set the table saw up and the dado and the fence and the depth and all that sort of stuff in order to cut out these tongues, I'm now going to do a test fit, and I now know that that fits beautifully. Obviously move that up to the top I wanted to like that. So that now fits beautifully. And obviously because you cut it, turn it around and cut it, it centralises it. So now it's a rinse and repeat. I'm going to cut all of the tongues, and then that will actually complete the joinery on the door. The rest of it after that is doing the panels. With this dry fitted now, we've got these gaps, and these were the gaps that we knew we would have because after releasing the tension when we cut this. So what I'm going to do is I want to put this under a clamp to clamp this flat, because this will be effectively what happens when we glue it up. Okay, so my plan worked, and even though the two outside verticals are bowed to the outside world under a clamp, they are responding perfectly. So that is the framework of the door. All the major components to the door are now completed. Start at day 3, I'm going to assemble the door, and then that way I can work out exactly how big the panels need to be. So time for time lapse. It's all marked out now. I've got clamps on it, and I've put these, as you can see here, these registration marks, so I know when I want to put it back together again exactly where it should line up. And then what I've done is, knowing that this has got a 3 centimetre deep groove in it, I've put a mark there, and correspondingly there's a mark on the other side there. We know this one's half the depth, that's 1.5 centimetres, and so with 2 clamps here, I know that these are bowing on the outsides. So with 2 clamps each, it allows me to look at any kind of potential bow out here. And there is a little bit, but I mean, we're talking 1.5 millimetres, so it's acceptable. So it means I can measure between that mark there and the corresponding mark on the other side, and then from up here, the 3 centimetre mark up here, and a 3 centimetre mark up here. And then that means that I can make the panels to the rough size, obviously accommodating for a little bit of movement side to side. Doesn't grow in length, but it does grow in width. And then from that point onwards, I'll need to shave them down on the table saw so that they actually fit into this groove here and still have the potential to slide. So I'm going to take out the dado stack of blades, put a single blade in there, and having established that everything's 25 centimetres wide, I'm going to knock off probably 1 centimetre and cut everything at 24 centimetres. So all the panels will be the right width, and then I'll cut them obviously to length. Now it's time, having cut the panels to length and to width, to put them on the table saw and effectively raise the panels themselves, which involves me inclining the blade over and a bit of a trial and error to get the panels to fit neatly into the grooves. I've run them all through on the table saw, and then I took the orbital sander and got rid of this edge because my brother doesn't want to see a panel. He doesn't want to see raised panels in that respect. So that has been smoothed out. There is a panel there, but you just can't see it because it's being raised. It's being erased, I should say. But you can see that there is a panel there. It's higher in the middle than it is on the outside. So they've all been cut to exactly the same size. That fits in, the registration marks line up, so that's good. That's where it needs to be, and that's tight there, which means that that fits into there. So, yeah, sand the rest of these down, and then a dry fit before gluing. All the panels are now sanded, and I will dry fit the door together just to make sure that it all fits prior to gluing. You can see the expansion. So if you look down there, that allows the expansion of the panel laterally. And then lengthwise, I mean, that's what you can see at that end. I'm sure there's a little bit in that part as well, so it should all fit together quite nicely. That's the door flipped around. Effectively, that would be the side that would normally have beading on it, but my brother doesn't want beading on it, which is fine with me because it's one less thing to do. And we are now ready to glue up. Glue up is finished. I used the straight edge in order to make sure that I hadn't put too much force on with this clamp that goes down the spine, so I didn't want to cause the whole thing to banana. The rest of it's clamped up, so I've checked it for square and it's good. I've turned it over, I've cleaned off as much of the glue as I possibly can. So we'll give it 24 hours in the clamps, come back tomorrow and sand it down. So end of day 3. all sanded, nice smooth edges. I think what I need to do now is to move the camera, and actually I'm going to put this on top of the table saw, and then I'm going to use my homemade rail saw and cut the ends. So that's the next job. So that's the smooth side of the door. And then if we flip the door around, that's the other side that's got the very slightly raised panels. So there's a slightly raised panel in there, like that. It's all nice and smooth. So door now completed. It's time to call my brother to get him to come and pick it up, and then we'll go and fit it.